Welcome to another deep exploration of the Elder Scrolls' darkest corners. Today, we are examining the factual organizational structure of the Dark Brotherhood, not legends or rumors, but the documented hierarchy, sanctuary systems, and operational protocols that made them Tamriel's most feared assassins. We will be covering the Black Hand's actual structure, the listener hierarchy, speaker territories, silencer operations, sanctuary leadership ranks from murderer to Shadowscale, historical sanctuary locations across Cyrodiil and beyond, the enforcement of the Five Tenets through the Wrath of Sithis, recruitment and initiation systems, contract distribution through dead drops, sanctuary security measures, Shadowscale integration from Black Marsh, Night Mother protocols and keeper duties, and the purification rituals that destroyed entire sanctuaries. This is the true account of how the Brotherhood operated at its height in the Third Era, how it collapsed during the Fourth Era through betrayal and war, how the Cheydinhal Sanctuary was purified when traitors infiltrated the Black Hand, and how the last remnants survived in Skyrim's frozen north. These are facts drawn from documented contracts, surviving journals, and the accounts of those who lived and died within the family. And if you genuinely enjoy these factual explorations of Tamriel's dark history, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if you like the content. The black door groaned open beneath the lucky old lady statue in Bravo, revealing stone steps descending into absolute darkness. Listener Ungolem descended, his Bosmer eyes adjusting to the gloom until he reached the iron coffin that had remained sealed for 3 centuries. The Night Mother's corpse lay within, perfectly preserved through rituals known only to the keepers who had long since turned to dust. Tonight, she would speak again. 13 names, the voice whispered, not through ears, but directly into Ungolem's mind, bypassing flesh entirely. 13 souls crying out through the black sacrament. 13 contracts, bound in blood and fear. The listener pressed his forehead against the cold iron, feeling the chill seep into his skull. Each name burned itself into his consciousness. A merchant in Skingrad, a beggar in the Imperial City, a nobleman's daughter in Cheydinhal. The Night Mother provided everything: names, locations, the specific sins that warranted their deaths. She was the conduit between Sithis and the mortal world, and only the listener could hear her eternal whispers. Ungolem climbed back into the dying light of evening, his mind heavy with murder yet to come. He would not perform these kills himself. That was not the listener's role. He was the thumb of the Black Hand, the ruling council that commanded the Dark Brotherhood from the shadows. The 4 speakers served as fingers, each overseeing their own sanctuary, their own stable of killers, and unknown to most brothers and sisters, each speaker employed a silencer, personal assassins representing the very nails of those fingers, operating above the laws that governed lesser members. The structure was elegant, sacred, a hand closed around Tamriel's throat, squeezing whenever Sithis demanded blood. Speaker Lucian Lachance received his assignments 3 days later at the crossroads north of Cheydinhal. Ungolem never appeared in person for such meetings. Listeners maintained their anonymity even from the Black Hand itself. Instead, a sealed letter materialized in the hollow of an ancient oak, written in ink mixed with grave dust and nightshade extract. 5 names, 5 contracts for the Cheydinhal Sanctuary. Lachance memorized every detail before the parchment ignited in his hands, leaving only ash. The magic was old, older than the Brotherhood itself, dating back to the Morag Tong and their rituals of murder from Afala. But the Dark Brotherhood had refined it, twisted it into service for Sithis, the void that hungered eternally. That night, Lachance descended into the Cheydinhal Sanctuary through the abandoned house that concealed its entrance. 7 assassins called this underground warren home: Ocheva and Tainava, twin Shadowscale siblings from Black Marsh; Vicente Valtieri, a vampire who had walked in darkness for 4 centuries; Mirage Dar, the cynical Khajiit alchemist; Gograngro Bolmog, whose orcish strength made up for his catastrophic stealth; Teleendril, a high elf whose arrows never missed; and Antoinetta Marie, still new enough to feel guilt. Brothers and sisters, Lachance addressed them in the main hall, where a dark guardian, an undead sentinel bound to protect the sanctuary, stood eternal watch. The Night Mother has provided 5 contracts, 5 souls to be offered to the dread father. Vicente Valtieri stepped forward, his pale flesh seeming to glow in the torchlight. I will take the first, he said in his aristocratic accent. Centuries of murder lending weight to every Fenet syllable. The vampire had been killing since the Second Era, had watched empires rise and crumble, had perfected the art of death until it became an expression of terrible beauty. This was the hierarchy within a sanctuary, unofficial but absolute. Vicente held the rank of assassin, having progressed from murderer to slayer to eliminator through dozens of completed contracts. Ochiva, as sanctuary matron, distributed assignments based on skill, experience, and the specific requirements each target demanded. A merchant required different handling than a battle mage. A child's murder, and yes, the Dark Brotherhood honored such contracts when the Black Sacrament was properly performed, needed an assassin willing to kill innocents without hesitation. The Five Tenets governed everything. They hung on the sanctuary walls, written in blood that never dried. Tenet 1. Never dishonor the Night Mother. To do so is to invoke the Wrath of Sithis. Tenet 2. Never betray the Dark Brotherhood or its secrets. To do so is to invoke the Wrath of Sithis. Tenet 3. Never disobey or refuse to carry out an order from a Dark Brotherhood superior. To do so is to invoke the Wrath of Sithis. Tenet 4. Never steal the possessions of a Dark Brother or Dark Sister. To do so is to invoke the Wrath of Sithis. Tenet 5. Never kill a Dark Brother or Dark Sister. To do so is to invoke the Wrath of Sithis. Break these tenets, and the Wrath of Sithis would manifest, a spectral assassin, a creature of pure void stuff that attacked the transgressor in their sleep. The first violation brought a wraith with the strength of a common ghost. Defeat it, and the brother or sister would be reinstated. The second violation brought something stronger. The third meant permanent exile. If the victim survived the third wrath at all, its health multiplied with each transgression until the final manifestation could tear through a master warrior like parchment. But there existed exceptions, sacred exceptions. The Black Hand has other business for me, Lachance continued, and something in his tone made even Vicente pause. I must journey to Bruma. While I am gone, Ochiva will manage sanctuary operations. What Lachance did not mention, could not mention, not even to his own brothers and sisters, was the dead drop he would establish in the wilderness outside Bruma. As a speaker, he employed a silencer, though none in this sanctuary knew the assassin's identity. The silencer operated independently, receiving contracts through hidden locations scattered across Cyrodiil. Hollowed rocks, ancient tree stumps, forgotten wells, places where orders could be left and collected without face-to-face contact. The system protected the Black Hand. If a silencer was captured, they could not reveal their speaker's identity because they had never met them. The contracts materialized through void magic, written in the same self-immolating ink that speakers used. Complete the kill, return to the past, dead drop for payment, and the location of the next assignment. Simple, efficient, absolutely lethal. 3 provinces away, Speaker J. Gasta oversaw the Bruma Sanctuary with brutal efficiency. The Argonian had earned his position through a lifetime of perfect kills, each one a masterwork of violence. His silencer, Havelstein Hoar Blood, had recently completed a contract that required infiltrating a fortress, murdering its commander, and escaping without leaving evidence of murder. The death had to appear natural. A heart attack in the night. Havelstein had spent 3 months researching poisons, cultivating a rare mushroom from Morrowind that stopped hearts without trace chemicals in the blood. The Black Hand demanded perfection. Anything less was failure. Failure meant death. In Leoween, Speaker Alval Uvani managed his sanctuary with cold precision. His silencer, a dark elf woman named Shaliz, had recently eliminated an entire family. The bonus objective on a particularly lucrative contract. The client had performed the Black Sacrament with exceptional devotion, assembling the effigy from her husband's own body parts. Heart, skull, bones, flesh, all arranged in a circle of candles, while she stabbed it repeatedly with a dagger rubbed with nightshade petals, whispering the profane prayer. Sweet mother, send your child unto me, for the sins of the unworthy must be baptized in blood and fear. The Night Mother heard every Black Sacrament. She existed beyond death, beyond the corporeal world, her spirit anchored to her preserved corpse through rituals of unimaginable darkness. When someone completed the sacrament correctly, When the hatred and desperation reached sufficient intensity, she relayed the contract to Ungalim, who distributed assignments to the 4 speakers. But the system required infrastructure. Sanctuaries had to be maintained, supplied, defended beneath Cheydinhal. The sanctuary sprawled through chambers carved from living rock centuries ago. The main hall connected to training quarters, where assassins practiced combat techniques in absolute silence. Noise discipline separated amateurs from professionals. The living quarters contained beds, personal chests, and the small comforts that made underground existence bearable. Vicente's room featured its own entrance from Ochieva's quarters, a tunnel only they knew about, allowing the vampire to come and go without using the main entrance. The sanctuary well provided a second exit, accessible only to those who held the sanctuary well key, awarded upon reaching the rank of Eliminator. 3 ranks below Assassin, below Speaker and Silencer, but still respectable, still trusted with sanctuary secrets. Mrajdar maintained the alchemy laboratory, brewing poisons and antidotes, crafting special compounds for specific contracts. Need something that killed instantly? Nightshade extract, concentrated until a single drop stopped hearts. Need something slow, untraceable? Certain mushrooms from the Valus Mountains produced toxins that mimicked wasting diseases, taking weeks to kill while the assassin established alibis hundreds of miles away. The sanctuary's quartermaster, currently Gogron, though he hated administrative work, managed the weapon stockpiles, enchanted daggers, blessed arrows, ropes treated with magic to resist cutting. The Brotherhood invested in quality. A broken bowstring during a critical shot meant failure. Failure meant death, the clients, or the assassins. Deep in Black Marsh, a different system operated in parallel, the Shadowscales. Tainava remembered his hatching, remembered being taken from his clutch the moment he emerged into the world. He had been born under the sign of the Shadow, during the month known to Argonians as the Second Seed. This marked him as property of the Dark Brotherhood from birth, a tradition stretching back to the earliest days when the Brotherhood forged alliances with the Argonian royalty. The Archon training facility had raised him. Other Shadowscale hatchlings surrounded him, dozens of young Argonians, all born under the same constellation, all destined for lives of assassination. The instructors were merciless. Those who failed training disappeared in the night. Those who succeeded emerged as perfect killers, taught from infancy that death was their purpose, murder their sacrament. Shadowscales held a unique position within the Brotherhood. They followed the Five Tenets like any member, but they also answered to additional masters. The Argonian royal court in Black Marsh could summon any Shadowscale for special assignments serving their homeland. They acted as Kuvaste, agents of necessary change, political arbiters who resolved conflicts through targeted elimination. A Shadowscale could not kill another Shadowscale, even if both were Brotherhood members. This law superseded the normal hierarchy. If a Shadowscale violated the Five Tenets, breaking them meant execution, but not by Brotherhood members. The royal court dispatched unaffiliated assassins to handle such cases, maintaining the sacred separation between Shadowscale justice and Brotherhood politics. Tainava's twin sister Ochieva had followed the traditional path, completed training at Archon, served the court with distinction, then transferred fully to the Dark Brotherhood. Both reached the rank of Eliminator. Both called Cheydinhal home. Both would die here, in the darkness beneath stone, never knowing the traitor already moved among the Black Hand. Matthew Bellamont had been planning for decades. His mother's murder by the Dark Brotherhood had occurred when Matthew was still a child. The Brotherhood had been hired to eliminate her, standard contract, nothing personal, simply business. But for Matthew, it became everything. He had spent his entire life infiltrating the organization that killed his mother, rising through ranks, earning trust, eventually achieving the impossible, membership in the Black Hand itself. Now, he wore the distinctive black robes, bore the title of Speaker. He oversaw a sanctuary. He employed a silencer. And every day, he plotted the Brotherhood's absolute destruction. His plan required patience, precision. He would use the Brotherhood's own systems against them, the dead drops, the silencers, the chain of command that protected the Black Hand. He would manipulate events so that brother killed brother, so that the Five Tenets meant nothing, so that the entire structure collapsed into fratricide and chaos. But first, He needed to eliminate the other members of the Black Hand. Speakers, silencers, the listener himself. Reduce the leadership to ashes, then watch the sanctuaries tear themselves apart. The dead drops would be his weapon. Across Cyrodiil, sanctuaries operated in shadow and secrecy. The Cheydinhal Sanctuary, under Speaker Arkwin's management, maintained 17 active assassins. The Bruma Sanctuary numbered 12. Each followed identical protocols, coded passwords at the black doors. What is the music of life? Silence, my brother. Internal hierarchies, from murderer to listener. Treasure rooms where contract payments accumulated before being distributed to sanctuary members. The Dark Brotherhood paid well. A simple assassination might bring 500 gold. Complex contracts with specific requirements make it look like an accident, ensure no witnesses, retrieve a specific item from the corpse, could command 5,000 or more. The wealthiest clients performed elaborate black sacraments, surrounding their effigies with rare candles, using daggers forged from meteoric iron, reciting the prayer for hours until their voices broke. The Night Mother heard them all. She was eternal, patient. Her corpse had been preserved through rituals recorded in texts so forbidden that reading them meant death. The keepers who tended her body knew secrets that could shatter minds, incantations to prevent decay, oils that maintained spiritual conductivity, methods to ensure her consciousness remained anchored to dead flesh rather than dissipating into the void. Before Cicero inherited the role in the Fourth Era, other keepers had served. Each had dedicated their entire existence to the Night Mother's preservation, washing her remains weekly, reciting ancient formulae, exterminating any insects or rodents that might contaminate her sacred corpse. The position ranked below the listener, but above all other members. Even speakers showed deference to the keeper. Back in Cheydinhal Sanctuary, Vicente Valtieri prepared for his contract. The target lived in Skingrad, a wine merchant who had cheated the wrong people, who had performed the Black Sacrament through proxy. The client could not commit murder themselves, but knew someone who could perform the ritual. They had provided the body parts, assembled the effigy, paid a cultist to recite the prayer. Such arrangements happened frequently. The Brotherhood did not care who performed the sacrament, only that it was done correctly. The Night Mother heard the intent behind the ritual, the hatred and fear that gave it power. She transmitted this to Ungolem. Ungolem distributed it to speakers. Speakers passed it to sanctuary members or, for particularly dangerous contracts, to their silencers. The merchant would die tonight. Poison in his wine. Poetic, efficient. Vicente had killed so many over the centuries that he had stopped counting sometime during the Third Era. This would be just another corpse, another soul fed to Sithis, another payment that helped maintain sanctuary operations. As Vicente departed through the well exit, Tainava approached Ochieva in her chamber. "Sister," he said quietly, using Gel, their native Argonian tongue, rather than Cyrodiilic. "I have felt wrongness. Something moves in the darkness beyond our darkness." Ochieva's yellow eyes narrowed. "Speak clearly, brother." "A Shadowscale has violated our code. Scartail. He deserted the court, fled to Cyrodiil. The royal court will not handle this. They have declared him our problem. Then we will resolve it." Ochieva's voice was cold. A Shadowscale deserter brought shame to all Shadowscales. They would need to handle this internally, quietly. What neither twin knew was that this small disruption, one renegade Shadowscale hiding in a cave near Liawen, represented merely the first thread pulling loose from the Brotherhood's tapestry. Greater betrayals were already in motion. Matthew Bellamont had begun his campaign of destruction. The dead drops would soon carry false orders. Silencers would target speakers. The Black Hand would tear itself apart. And deep beneath Bravel, in her iron tomb, the Night Mother waited. She knew what was coming. She had seen it in the void, in the spaces between spaces where Sithis whispered his truths. The Brotherhood would burn, sanctuaries would fall, the listener would die, but from ashes, new hands would rise. Sithis demanded balance. For every sanctuary destroyed, another would awaken. For every listener murdered, another would hear the binding words that only the Night Mother could teach. Darkness rises when silence dies. The architecture of death would endure. It always did. If you are engaged with this account so far, hit that like and subscribe button. The hero of Kavach murdered Rufio in his sleep. The old Imperial lay in his bed at the Inn of Ill Omen, a decrepit establishment that squatted beside the road like a tumor. The basement room stank of rot and regret. Rufio had been dreaming, dreams of crimes committed decades ago, of children's screams, of fires that consumed entire families. His past had finally caught up to him through the Black Sacrament, performed by a grieving father who had spent everything he owned on the ritual components, one stroke across the throat. Blood pooled on stained sheets. The void claimed another soul. When the hero next slept, Lucien Lachance materialized in the darkness, not through doors or windows. Speakers of the Black Hand could move through shadow itself when Sithis willed it. He stood beside the bed, black robes blending with the night, and spoke the words that had recruited countless murderers over centuries. Congratulations, you have committed murder, and I represent an organization that greatly admires that sort of thing. Would you be interested in joining us? The recruitment process had remained unchanged since the Second Era. The Night Mother watched for promising killers, those who murdered with skill, creativity, or exceptional brutality. When a murderer slept in a location deemed safe, a speaker approached with an invitation and a test contract. Complete the kill, prove your worth, speak the password at the black door. Sanguine, my brother. The Cheydinhal Sanctuary's door groaned open, recognizing the passphrase. The hero descended into a world of professional murder, where killing was art and death was currency. Ochiva greeted them in the main hall, her scaled face betraying no emotion as she explained sanctuary protocols. Vicente Valtieri distributes contracts from the Night Mother. Complete them efficiently, honor the 5 tenets, and you will rise through our ranks. Fail, and Sithis will claim you. The hierarchy began at Murderer, the lowest rank, where new recruits learned Brotherhood method. Complete 5 contracts successfully, demonstrate competence with poisons and stealth, and promotion to Slayer became possible. Continue excelling, and the ranks progressed: Eliminator, Assassin, Executioner. Beyond that lay positions most members never achieved: Silencer, Speaker, Keeper, Listener. The hero proved exceptional. Contract after contract fell. Captain Gaston Tussaud stabbed in the Imperial City waterfront. Bainlin crushed beneath his own mounted Minotaur head in a murder staged as tragic accident. Valandreth executed in the Imperial prison where he had once mocked the hero during their own incarceration. Each kill brought payment, reputation, advancement, but excellence attracted attention. Dangerous attention. The Black Hand has need of you, Ocheva said after the Summit Mist Manor massacre, where the hero had eliminated 5 targets locked in a manor house during a dinner party. The bonus objective, kill them all without anyone knowing until morning, had required exquisite timing, perfect poison placement, and nerves of steel. Speaker Lachance requests your presence at Fort Farragut. Fort Farragut had been abandoned for decades, its halls now patrolled by undead guardians. Lucien Lachance made it his temporary headquarters, specifically because its dangers kept visitors away. A hollowed tree trunk outside provided secret access, bypassing the necromantic sentries entirely. When the hero entered through that hidden passage, Lachance delivered news that would shatter the Cheydinhal Sanctuary forever. There is a traitor among us, Lachance said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Someone within the Cheydinhal Sanctuary has been murdering brothers and sisters. The Black Hand has investigated. We have concluded that the entire sanctuary must be cleansed. The word hung in the air like a blade. Purification. The ritual dated back to the Second Era, when a sanctuary became compromised, corrupted by traitors, infected with vampirism against Sithis' will, or simply too weak to continue. The Black Hand ordered its complete elimination. Every member executed. Every soul offered to Sithis as sacrifice. The sanctuary rebuilt from nothing, purified through annihilation. Only 3 purifications had occurred in recorded Brotherhood history. The first at Sith Izkul's sanctuary in Black Marsh, where Silencer Lyra Viria had slaughtered her own brothers and sisters under orders from the Black Hand. She had completed the ritual perfectly, then immediately betrayed the Brotherhood by joining the Order of Thad, the Hour, and dedicating her skills to destroying her former family. The second purification came in 3rd Era 421, targeting the Crimson Scars, a vampiric subfaction that had plotted to transform every Brotherhood member into undead. The Black Hand learned of their conspiracy through an assassin named Solarian, who had infiltrated the Scars specifically to expose them. During a single night, the traitors died in their sleep, silver daggers through their hearts. Only two escaped: Graywyn Blenwith, the Scars founder, and a Breton accomplice. It took 12 years to track Graywyn down and end him. Now came the third purification. You will kill everyone in the Cheydinhal Sanctuary, Lachance commanded. Ocheva, Vicente Valtieri, Antoinetta Marie, Gogran Gro Bolmog, Teliendril, Mirage Dar, Tainava, all of them. Only the Dark Guardian and the Rat Schemer are exempt. They are not suspects. He provided tools for the task: poisoned apples, crafted by Brotherhood. Alchemists place one in a target's inventory or on a table, and when consumed, death followed within hours. A scroll that summoned Rufio's vengeful ghost, bound to serve his murderer for limited periods. The hero already possessed the Blade of Woe, Lachance's personal weapon, gifted after an earlier contract. As my silencer, you will be permanently exempt from the Five Tenets, Lachance explained. You may kill brothers and sisters without invoking the Wrath of Sithis. This authority supersedes all Brotherhood law. The promotion to silencer meant operating above normal hierarchy. Silencers received contracts through dead drops rather than sanctuary assignments. They answered only to their speaker. They represented the Black Hand's hidden talons, unknown even to most Black Hand members. The hero returned to Cheydinhal and began the massacre. Vicente Valtieri died first. The vampire had mentored the hero, taught them advanced techniques, even offered the dark gift of vampirism through his personal quest. He had lived for 4 centuries, survived the Oblivion Crisis, watched empires crumble, but when garlic appeared in his inventory, reverse pickpocketed during a moment of distraction, his vampiric weaknesses manifested catastrophically. The subsequent fight lasted seconds. Mirage Dar apologized as he died. I was too harsh with you, newcomer. I see that now. The Khajiit alchemist had been abrasive, cynical, but his potions had saved countless Brotherhood lives over the years. His unique inventory of rare ingredients would be lost forever. The items existed in an inaccessible merchant chest that could not be looted from his corpse. Gogran Gro Bolmog fought with surprising ferocity for someone so terrible at stealth. The orc had always joked about his incompetence, about how he sounded like a drunken mammoth when sneaking, but he had completed dozens of contracts through sheer determination and brutal efficiency. His battle axe cleaved through stone pillars before the hero's blade found his throat. Antoinetta Marie begged. She had only joined the Brotherhood months ago, still plagued by nightmares about her first kills. Please, she whispered as poison coursed through her veins. I did not. I never. The poisoned apple had been left on the dining table, mixed among normal fruit. She had eaten it during breakfast, never suspecting. Tainava died confused. The Shadowscale had served the Brotherhood faithfully since hatching, had completed the Archon training, had honored every tradition of his sacred order. Brother, he gasped, blood bubbling between his teeth. Why? There was no answer. The purification allowed no explanations, no mercy, no exceptions. Ocheva, his twin sister, lasted longest. She had suspected something was wrong, had begun investigating the murders herself. When confronted, she fought with Shadowscale precision, every strike aimed at vital organs, every dodge calculated for maximum efficiency. But the hero had surpassed her. The sanctuary matron fell in the main hall, her yellow eyes dimming as her blood mixed with the ancient stone. Teliendril proved difficult to locate. The high elf assassin spent most of her time traveling across Cyrodiil, only returning to the sanctuary on Midas, Wednesday. The hero tracked her through Leoween, Bravel, Cheydinhal streets, following quest markers that glowed on the hero's internal compass. When the confrontation finally came near the Cheydinhal Mages Guild, Teliendril's arrows found their targets with supernatural accuracy. But arrows required distance. Close quarters belonged to daggers. 7 corpses, 7 souls sacrificed to Sithis, 7 chests full of personal belongings that would never be claimed. The hero looted everything: shrouded armor sets, enchanted weapons, keys to locked containers. The sanctuary's coffers held thousands of gold coins, contract payments, emergency funds, bribe money for corrupted guards. All of it now belonged to the silencer who had executed the purification. Lachance waited at Fort Farragut with the promised reward: Shadowmere, The demonic horse emerged from a black pool behind the fort, a creature of living shadow and nightmare, eyes glowing red, mane trailing darkness. Shadowmere was immortal, could never truly die. Arrows and swords might fell her temporarily, but she would rise again, reborn from void stuff and Sithis will. She was faster than any mortal steed, stronger, more vicious. She would fight alongside her rider, trampling enemies beneath obsidian hooves. Dead drop orders begin now, LeChance explained, handing over a letter. Your first contract waits at Hero Hill, southeast of Cheydinhal. A hollowed rock contains your instructions. Complete the assignment, and the dead drop will provide your next target's location. You serve the Black Hand directly. You are my silencer. The system functioned with mechanical efficiency. The hero rode to Hero Hill and found a hollow rock formation. Inside, parchment, written in void ink, described the target, Celdane, a necromancer attempting lichdom in Leafrot Cave. The instructions specified methods, weaknesses, bonus objectives. At the bottom, coordinates for the next dead drop, the Great Oak and Chorrel, complete the kill. Collect payment from the dead drop, receive the next assignment. The cycle continued across Cyrodiil, hollowed rocks, ancient wells, tree stumps, hidden locations that only Black Hand members knew. Each dead drop self-destructed after being read, the parchment igniting through void magic, leaving no evidence. The contracts escalated in difficulty. The Draconis family, 5 members scattered across their estate, all marked for death due to political machinations. The hero eliminated them systematically, making each death appear unrelated to the others. The bonus objective required killing them all within a single day. The payment, 2,000 gold. Adamus Philida, former commander of the Imperial Legion's Watch, a man who Askling had dedicated his career to destroying the Dark Brotherhood, who had arrested dozens of members over the decades. His retirement to Leoween should have meant safety. Instead, it made him accessible. The contract specified a grotesque requirement. After killing Philida, the hero must sever his ring finger and place it on the desk of his successor, a message that the Dark Brotherhood remained untouchable. The hero shot Philida with the Rose of Sithis while he swam in Leoween's waters, avoiding guards and witnesses. The enchanted arrow killed instantly. The finger was delivered as ordered, but the dead drops had been compromised. Matthew Bellamont had been watching, learning the patterns. He had discovered one of LeChance's drop locations through surveillance and patient stalking. When the hero's next contract appeared, Bellamont replaced it with his own orders, written in identical void ink, sealed with identical magic. The new target, Jay Gasta, Speaker of the Black Hand, the hero, had no reason to suspect deception. The contract appeared legitimate, complete with payment details and the next drop location. Jay Gasta died at his residence in Bruma, his Argonian blood staining expensive carpets. Then came orders to kill Shaliz, then Alval Uvani, then Havelstein Hoar Blood. Each victim was a member of the Black Hand, speakers and their silencers, the ruling council itself. The hero performed the assassinations flawlessly, believing them legitimate contracts from the Night Mother. Until Ungolim, the listener lived in Bravel beneath layers of secrecy and protection. His actual residence, a small house near the lucky old lady statue, seemed ordinary, but Ungolim was no ordinary target. He was a master assassin who had survived centuries of political intrigue, who had eliminated countless threats to the Brotherhood. When he discovered a contract on his own life, he prepared accordingly. The confrontation happened at dawn. Ungolim had bribed his guards to stay out of it. He wanted to face his killer personally. The battle raged through his house and into the street, blades clashing, blood flowing. Ungolim fought with desperation born from betrayal, but the hero had been trained by the Brotherhood's best. The listener fell. Lucien Lachance materialized immediately, rage distorting his usually composed features. "Traitor!" he screamed. "You have murdered the Black Hand, the speakers, the silencers, the listener himself. Did you truly think I would not discover your betrayal?" But as Lachance ranted, recognition dawned in his eyes. The hero showed genuine confusion. They had followed orders exactly, completed every contract as specified. There had been no betrayal, only deception. Someone has been replacing the dead drops, Lachance realized aloud, his fury transforming into cold horror. Someone knew the locations, knew the timing. They used you as a weapon against the Black Hand. He gave new orders. Proceed to the next dead drop at Anvil, Lighthouse. Wait for whoever delivered the false contract. capture them, extract information. The courier was a desperate man named Enelroth, paid generously to place orders at specific locations without asking questions. Under interrogation, he revealed his employer's identity and location, the lighthouse keeper's cellar. The hero descended into nightmare. Matthew Bellamont had transformed the lighthouse cellar into a shrine to his murdered mother. Severed heads adorned altars. Animal corpses hung from hooks. Blood symbols covered every wall, not brotherhood symbols, but personal sigils of vengeance. The mother's head, labeled clearly, sat on a pedestal surrounded by candles. A diary detailed everything: Matthew's childhood trauma, his patient infiltration of the Brotherhood, his rise to speaker rank, his systematic plan to destroy the organization by manipulating its own members into fratricide. Every dead drop location, every forged contract, every murdered Black Hand member. LeChance had been right. There was a traitor, but it was not in the Cheydinhal Sanctuary. The purification had killed innocents. The remaining Black Hand members, Arkan, Banus Alor, Belisarius, Arius, and Matthew himself, summoned LeChance to Applewatch Farmhouse for tribunal. They believed LeChance was the traitor, that he had orchestrated the murders to seize control of the Brotherhood. Despite his protests, despite the evidence in the diary, they executed him in the cornfield. Only then did the Night Mother intervene. The 4 surviving Black Hand members performed the ritual of awakening, descending into her crypt beneath the lucky old lady statue. They needed guidance, needed the Night Mother to appoint a new listener. She spoke to the hero instead. Darkness rises when silence dies. The voice whispered directly into the hero's mind, the binding words that confirmed true listeners. Matthew Bellamont's face went pale. His revenge plot crumbled as the Night Mother revealed his treachery to everyone present. The traitor attacked in the crypt itself. Banus Alor and Belisarius Arius died in the ensuing chaos. Arkan survived. Matthew died screaming as the hero's blade found his heart. If this narrative has kept you listening, and you want more factual accounts from the frozen north of Tamriel, hit that like button. It really motivates me to create more Elder Scrolls content. The Night Mother's crypt beneath Bravel reeked of ancient death and fresh blood. Arkan stood among corpses. 3 Black Hand members slain in the span of minutes, their black robes soaking up blood from the stone floor. Matthew Bellamont's body lay crumpled against the iron coffin, his revenge finally ending in the darkness he had tried to destroy. The hero of Catch pressed forehead to the coffin's lid, feeling the chill of iron and the impossible warmth of the consciousness within. The Night Mother's voice continued speaking, sharing secrets that no living person should know: the true history of the Brotherhood, the nature of Sithis, the void that hungered eternally beneath reality's skin. "You are listener now," she whispered. "You will rebuild what was broken. The Black Hand will rise again from these ashes." Arkan knelt, her voice hoarse from screaming during the battle. "The Cheydinhal Sanctuary stands empty. I will recruit new members, restore what was lost. But we are crippled. Half the Black Hand dead, our listener inexperienced, our speakers reduced to 1. Then serve," the Night Mother commanded. "Serve your new listener as you would serve me. For I am eternal, and the Brotherhood will endure." The reconstruction began immediately. Arkan returned to Cheydinhal and initiated recruitment protocols. The Dark Guardian resumed its eternal patrol. Fresh assassins arrived, those who had committed murders and been contacted by Arkan in her speaker capacity. The sanctuary slowly repopulated with killers eager to join the legendary Dark Brotherhood, but the organization had suffered catastrophic damage. 4 sanctuaries in Cyrodiil, Cheydinhal, Bruma, Leawin, Sherol, remained operational, but their leadership had been decimated. Finding replacement speakers required years of careful observation, testing potential candidates' loyalty and skill. The process could not be rushed. Promote someone unsuitable to the Black Hand, and another Matthew Bellamont might emerge. The hero completed one final contract from the Night Mother, assassinating the Imperial traitor Rufio had actually been protecting years ago, a loose end tied up with characteristic Brotherhood efficiency. Then the hero vanished into legend, presumably continuing to serve as listener while maintaining absolute anonymity. Historical records became unclear about their ultimate fate, though some claimed they were present during the Grey March in the Shivering Isles, suggesting the listener might have achieved apotheosis through Daedric intervention. The 4th era arrived with catastrophe. When Mehrunes Dagon invaded Tamriel during the Oblivion Crisis, the Brotherhood initially profited. Chaos meant opportunity. Desperate people performed the Black Sacrament in unprecedented numbers, begging the Night Mother to eliminate Daedra, cultists, or political rivals who had collaborated with Dagon's forces. Contracts flooded in. The Brotherhood worked constantly, blades wet with blood from Skyrim to Hammerfell, but the crisis also brought scrutiny. The Penitentiae Oculatus, an elite imperial organization dedicated to protecting the Emperor, began systematic campaigns against the Brotherhood. They could not eliminate the assassins entirely, but they made operations dangerous. Several sanctuaries came under direct attack. Brothers and sisters died defending their homes. Then came the Great War in 4th Era, 171. The Aldmeri Dominion's invasion of Cyrodiil created unprecedented chaos. Both the Empire and the Dominion viewed the Dark Brotherhood as potential assets or threats, launching operations to either control or destroy them. The Brotherhood tried maintaining neutrality. They assassinated targets for whoever performed the Black Sacrament and paid appropriately, regardless of political affiliation. This impartiality made them enemies on all sides. The Bruma Sanctuary fell in 4th Era, 186. Dominion forces, believing the Brotherhood favored the Empire, launched a coordinated assault. They breached the Black Door through sheer overwhelming force, dozens of battle mages bombarding it with destruction magic until the ancient wards failed. Every brother and sister inside died fighting. Only one survivor escaped, a jester named Cicero, who had been on contract when the attack occurred. Cicero fled to the Cheydinhal Sanctuary, carrying news of Bruma's annihilation. The surviving Black Hand, now reduced to a handful of members after years of attrition, met in emergency session. They needed to consolidate, abandon indefensible positions, protect the Night Mother's corpse. Her crypt in Bravel had become a target. Commander Uther Nera of the Penitentiae Oculatus had been obsessed with destroying the Brotherhood for years, ever since discovering his daughter, Alisande Dupre, had become the new listener. His rage at her betrayal of family drove him to extreme measures. In 4th Era, 188, Uther gathered mercenaries and assaulted the crypt. The battle lasted hours. Alisande defended her spiritual mother with suicidal determination, fighting her own biological father in the sacred darkness beneath the lucky old lady statue. Brotherhood reinforcements arrived, speakers, silencers, common assassins drawn by emergency signals. The fighting spilled into Bravel's streets. When the smoke cleared, Alisande lay dead, incinerated by her father's magic. Uther himself had been killed by Brotherhood blades, but crucially, an assassin named Garnag had retrieved the Night Mother's coffin before it could be destroyed, escaping through pre-planned tunnels while Bravel descended into riot. Garnag brought the coffin to Cheydinhal. The surviving Black Hand reinstituted an ancient position that had not been filled in centuries, Keeper of the Night Mother. They chose Cicero. The jester had always been strange, obsessive, theatrical, prone to manic laughter and dark poetry, but his devotion to the Brotherhood was absolute. He had completed hundreds of contracts with disturbing enthusiasm, treating each murder as performance art. Now he would dedicate himself entirely to the Night Mother's preservation. The role required constant maintenance. The corpse had been preserved for millennia through rituals so complex that entire libraries could be filled with their documentation. Cicero studied the forbidden texts, learned the incantations, mastered the techniques. Every week, he washed the body with consecrated oils, recited prayers in languages older than the Empire, exterminated any insects that dared approach the sacred remains. The body is perfectly preserved, Cicero wrote in his journal, so the concern is not physical, but rather spiritual. The remains must be sanctified regularly, so that they may continue to serve as a conduit for the Night Mother's soul. But the Night Mother had stopped speaking. No new listener emerged after Alisande's death. The ritual of awakening was performed repeatedly, the surviving Black Hand descending into the crypt and calling out for guidance. Silence answered. The Night Mother's spirit traveled the void freely, but without a listener, she could not relay the Black Sacraments to the Brotherhood. This crippled operations catastrophically. Without the Night Mother's guidance, the Brotherhood had to rely on rumors and word of mouth to find contracts. They lost their mystical edge, became mere mortal assassins competing with common thugs. Recruitment plummeted. Revenues dried up. Sanctuaries could not sustain. themselves. In 4th Era 189, a speaker named Rasha proclaimed himself listener. He claimed the Night Mother had spoken to him, chosen him to lead the Brotherhood into a new era. The remaining Black Hand members wanted desperately to believe him. They needed a listener, needed direction, needed hope. Cicero demanded proof. "Speak the binding words," he insisted, clutching a tome that contained the phrase known to all true listeners, words the Night Mother taught telepathically, words that could not be guessed or discovered through research. Rasha could not recite them. His claims were exposed as desperate lies. Cicero ordered Garnag to execute the false listener. The assassination was performed quietly, without ceremony. Rasha's body was fed to swamp creatures near the sanctuary. The Cheydinhal Sanctuary continued deteriorating. Members left to find contracts independently, never returned. Some died on botched assignments. Others simply deserted, recognizing that the Brotherhood was dying. By 4th Era 200, only 3 members remained: Cicero, Garnog, and a brother named Pontius. Then Pontius was killed by common bandits in the Imperial city streets, a humiliating end for a Dark Brotherhood assassin. Garnag vanished next. Cicero searched for months, finding no trace. The possibilities were grim: desertion, death, capture by the Penitus Oculatus. The result was identical. Cicero was alone. The last assassin in Cyrodiil stood in the empty Cheydinhal Sanctuary, surrounded by memories of murders past. The training room where he had learned to kill. The living quarters where brothers and sisters had shared stories between contracts. The main hall where the Dark Guardian had once stood eternal watch, now collapsed into rubble, its animating magic finally exhausted. Cicero made his decision. He would transport the Night Mother to the last active sanctuary on the continent, Falkreath, in Skyrim. The journey took months. Cicero commissioned a wagon, loaded the Night Mother's stone coffin aboard, and traveled north through bandit-infested wilderness. The wagon broke down repeatedly. The axle snapped near Whiterun, stranding him beside Lorea's farm. A passerby, possibly the last Dragonborn, though records are unclear, helped convince the farmer Loreas to provide repairs. Cicero reached Falkreath Sanctuary in 4th Era 201, 2 centuries after the hero of Kvatch had served as listener. The sanctuary was operating under Astrid's leadership. She had abandoned the traditional structure entirely. No listener, no Night Mother worship, no black sacraments. Her Brotherhood functioned as a business. Clients hired them directly, paid in gold, received guaranteed kills. The Five Tenets had been discarded as outdated superstition. When Cicero arrived with the Night Mother's corpse, Astrid reacted with barely concealed hostility. The old ways threatened her authority. If a new listener emerged, her leadership would become irrelevant. But she could not refuse entry to the Keeper. Some traditions remained too powerful to violate openly. The Falkreath Brotherhood consisted of only a handful of members. Nazir, a Redguard who distributed minor contracts. Babette, a child vampire who had lived 300 years. Vizara, the last known Shadowscale, with the Archon training facility closed and Shadowscale tradition abandoned in Black Marsh, no new members of that ancient order would ever emerge. Festus Krex, an elderly mage who favored destruction magic over daggers. Arnbjorn, Astrid's husband, and the sanctuary's werewolf. They lived in a sanctuary, accessed through another black door, this one asking, "What is the music of life?" The password remained, "Silence, my brother." When the last Dragonborn murdered Grelod the Kind in Windhelm, an old woman running Honor Hall Orphanage who had been physically abusing the children in her care, they unknowingly answered a black sacrament. The orphan Aventus, Aretino had performed the ritual in his family home, assembling an effigy from body parts stolen from Windhelm's Hall of the Dead, reciting the prayer with a child's desperation. Astrid kidnapped the Dragonborn and offered them a choice: join the Brotherhood or die. The Dragonborn chose membership and began completing contracts for Nazir, simple murders. Nothing extraordinary. A bandit leader here, a corrupt merchant there. Then the Night Mother spoke. The Dragonborn was eavesdropping on Cicero when the voice manifested, not to the Keeper, despite his years of devoted service, but to this newcomer. "Darkness rises when silence dies," she whispered, teaching the binding words that confirmed true listeners. Cicero was devastated, but remained faithful. "I tried to listen," he confessed later. "Tried so hard," but the Night Mother never spoke to poor Cicero. The silence became almost maddening. Astrid's authority collapsed. The Night Mother had chosen a listener, validating everything Astrid had rejected. The new listener received contracts directly from the Night Mother, legitimate black sacraments performed across Skyrim. Amand Motier, a nobleman, wanted Emperor Titus Mede II assassinated. The contract was worth thousands of gold, would restore the Brotherhood's reputation across Tamriel, but Astrid could not surrender control. When Cicero attacked her for disrespecting the Night Mother's authority, she ordered the listener to hunt down the Keeper and kill him. The listener tracked Cicero to the abandoned Dawnstar Sanctuary, one of Skyrim's earliest Brotherhood strongholds. Unused for a century but still protected by a black door asking, "What is life's greatest illusion?" Answer: innocence, my brother. The choice came down to tradition versus pragmatism. Kill Cicero and maintain Astrid's leadership, or spare him and honor the old ways. Many listeners chose mercy, recognizing that the Keeper's madness stemmed from devotion, not betrayal. The Emperor assassination proceeded regardless. The listener infiltrated the wedding of the Emperor's cousin in solitude, killed her publicly, then escaped through the chaos. Penitus Oculatus Commander Maro set traps, but the listener evaded them all. The Emperor himself was killed aboard his ship in Solitude's harbor, not the decoy from earlier in the contract, but Titus Mede II himself. The old Emperor accepted his fate with dignity. "I know who sent you," he said before the blade fell. He made one final request: kill the man who had ordered his assassination, Amand Motier. The listener honored this request, eliminating Motier and claiming the payment for both contracts. But Astrid had made her own choice. Unable to accept the Night Mother's authority, she had contacted Commander Maro and revealed the assassination plot. She had betrayed the Brotherhood to the Penitus Oculatus, believing she could negotiate terms that preserved her leadership while eliminating the traditional hierarchy. The Penitus Oculatus assaulted the Falkreath Sanctuary instead. When the listener returned from killing the Emperor, they found carnage. Vizara lay dead near Astrid's chamber, his Shadowscale training insufficient against dozens of Imperial soldiers. Festus Krex had been killed outside, pinned to a tree with arrows. Arnbjorn died defending the entrance. The sanctuary was rigged to explode. Oil barrels and incendiaries had been placed throughout, ready to incinerate everything, every brother, every sister, every trace of the Dark Brotherhood. Astrid lay dying in her chamber, burns covering 90% of her body. She had triggered the trap herself, preferring suicide to capture. In her final moments, she performed the Black Sacrament on herself. Sweet Mother, send your child unto me," she rasped through ruined lungs. "For the sins of the unworthy must be baptized in blood and fear. I contract myself." The listener honored her final wish. The blade of woe ended Astrid's suffering. Then the Night Mother intervened one last time. "Embrace me," she commanded. The listener climbed into the stone coffin with the ancient corpse. The doors sealed. When the sanctuary exploded, the coffin survived, protected by void magic older than Skyrim itself. Nazir and Babette pulled the coffin from the wreckage hours later. The listener emerged unharmed. 3 survivors from Tamriel's once mighty Dark Brotherhood, a Redguard warrior, a child vampire, and a listener chosen by the Night Mother herself. They relocated to the Dawnstar Sanctuary. The old structure required repairs, but it was defensible, isolated, safe. Cicero joined them there, if he had been spared. If not, they rebuilt without him. The Brotherhood endured, barely, precariously. The listener could perform the Dark Brotherhood Forever contract indefinitely, answering black sacraments the Night Mother relayed from across Skyrim. Children prayed for abusive parents to die. Betrayed lovers wanted vengeance. The desperate, the hateful, the vengeful, they all performed the ancient ritual, and the Night Mother heard. In the Dawnstar Sanctuary, in a land of frozen tundra and dragon-haunted skies, the last remnant of the Dark Brotherhood maintained its sacred mission. The 5 Tenets were honored again. The Night Mother was respected. The listener served faithfully. Sithis fed well. The void consumed souls endlessly, eternally hungry, never satisfied. And in sanctuaries yet unborn, in eras still to come, the Brotherhood would rise again, because murder was eternal, death was inevitable. And wherever mortals harbored hatred deep enough to perform the Black Sacrament, the Night Mother would hear. The architecture of death had crumbled, the hierarchies had collapsed, the sanctuaries had burned, but the darkness endured. It always would.